Hey everybody, I'm Patrick, an American expat living in Denmark. If you've ever had the pleasure of sitting next to me at lunch, then you know I love to ramble on and on about food and diet and how I have it all figured out. It's just that growing up as a kid in the US in the 80s, and now living halfway around the world in little old Denmark, has given me an interesting perspective on food culture. I come from a middle-class family in a medium-sized city in western New York State. When I was in 5th grade, I had my first health class, where they told us to eat less sweets and fried food, more fruits and vegetables, and exercise regularly. But if it was so important, then why did most of my meals end up looking more like this? A healthy breakfast, a sensible lunch, and a home-cooked dinner. Well, it wasn't always like this in America. My great-grandparents, who came off the boat from Germany, would have licked their lips at the thought of warm liver pate on black bread. Their son, my grandfather, was probably served a fusion of homemade German food mixed with more locally available ingredients. Still, very much what we would consider real food. Now, my poor mom grew up in the 50s and 60s, where things had advanced to time-saving mixes, microwaves, and TV dinners. Cooking became assembly, and to this day in the US, you still need to differentiate between homemade and from scratch. By the time I came around, any semblance of a traditional eating culture had been replaced by whatever the food industry decided to call healthy that week. And my idea of real food was pretty much How could things have gone so wrong in just a few generations? Well, it took moving to the land of Hans Christian Andersen 10 years ago to start putting it together. People still made food from scratch. Every day. They ate raw oats for breakfast, just like the horses. And when they wanted whipped cream, they actually whipped cream. But don't be fooled, the traditional Danish food culture also has its challenges. My wife and I realized that if we wanted to get on track with our diet, we had to start questioning everything from the bottom up. For years, we read up on the latest trends in food and health research and debated over them around our own dinner table. We experimented with organic food prep boxes, eating more vegetarian, and growing food in our own backyard. And here are 10 principles we took out of the experience. Number 1. Never cheap out on food. Why? Because there's an old saying that without your health you have nothing. We're willing to bet on that. Number 2. Eat a plant-based diet as our baseline. Why? Because evidence points to vegetarians living longer, healthier lives. Number 3. Eat a lot of medium-sized fatty fish. Why? Because the right kinds of fish contain a lot of healthy omega acids without the heavy metals. Number 4. Make meals from scratch and snack on whole foods. Why? Because your body knows what to do with real food. And when we're forced to buy pre-made things, we look for versions with essential ingredients only. Number 5. Stay away from red and processed meat. Why? Because whether it's the red meat itself or the lack of plants as a result, too much red meat has been conclusively shown to increase the risk of getting heart disease and cancer. Limiting red meat is also the single best thing you can do as an individual to reduce greenhouse emissions from factory farming. Number 6. That thing I said about red meat, we say yes sometimes when it's served by family or friends. Why? Because a little red meat won't kill us, and the social aspect of eating shouldn't be underestimated when trying to stick to a healthy diet. Number 7. Spend the extra money on organic whenever it's an option. Why? Because being organic alone doesn't necessarily mean it tastes better or provides better nutrition, but it certainly contains less pesticides that haven't yet been proven harmful. Number 8. Spend the extra money on local and in-season whenever it's an option. Why? Because things grown locally and in-season tend to taste better, and supporting our local food economy just makes sense. Number 9. Approach eating with a 90% success rate expectation. Why? Because we're in it for the long game. If we try to adhere too rigidly to anything, we are bound to fall off the wagon and then lose all that precious time struggling to get back on it. Number 10. Try to follow the latest evidence, even if it goes against a long-held belief or habit. Why? Because we don't think any single piece of food is worth compromising our long-term health. Even bacon. Those guidelines are definitely not perfect. They're probably not ambitious enough for some of you, and too rigid for others. But don't take my word for it. Most of that advice can be found no further than both the US and Danish health departments' current recommendations. Man, I could have saved a lot of money on books. No, not everyone can switch countries midway through life, or marry someone who loves to cook and thinks it's fun to talk about nutrition. But what we can all do is take food more seriously. Maybe take that tiny next step, dropping the cola from our supermarket list, spending a little more for organic apples, or trying out a vegetarian recipe for dinner tonight, your 5th grade self would be impressed.